Hello and welcome to the TelecomTV Summit on the Cloud Native Telco. I'm Guy Daniels, Director of Content. And coming up now is our roundtable discussion on best practices for creating telco DevOps teams. Now, are successful DevOps teams independent of the industry in which they operate? Or do telcos have to create more bespoke teams with unique skill sets to meet their specific requirements? What works and what doesn't work within a telco environment? It's time to share best practices. And let me introduce today's guests. Neil McRae, Managing Director, Architecture and Technology Strategy and Chief Architect for BT. Pierre Lavillat, who is 5G Core Stack and Global Practice Manager, CTG Mobile Core and 5G at Hewlett Packard Enterprise. And Andriy Zhylenko, who is the CEO of PortaOne. Well, hello everyone. Very good to see you all. Thank you so much for taking part in our discussion. So let's begin and let's ask the question, why should telcos even be considering DevOps, and just how committed are they to this structure? Is this recognized as an essential move in order to maximize the capabilities of cloud native, or is it still viewed with some perhaps skepticism and still regarded as a niche undertaking amongst the wider telco community? Neil, perhaps I could start our conversation with you and to ask you, simply, why DevOps in telco?
It's a good question, Guy, and I think actually for us, we're probably down a path at BT of what we call a hybrid mode, where there are certain aspects of what we do where DevOps works really well, particularly on the kind of telco application side for developing solutions like conferencing or new voice solutions, where it's more of an application server than it is a traditional piece of telco hardware. And DevOps works really well because in today's world, you're trying to get stuff developed quickly. You're trying to get it out in the live quickly. You don't want to do long testing cycles and go through the old siloed way of doing software engineering. So, we work on a continuous deployment, continuous testing mode where, when we add a feature, we push it out. We add a bug fix, we push it out. Occasionally we have to roll things back, and the modern DevOps allows us to do that. But also the complexity of the applications that we're running in this space now, it's really hard for someone to kind of pick that up and manage it as an operation. You used to have plan, build, design, operate, and often the operations team would think we'd thrown stuff over the door at them on occasion. With the modern day cloud native capabilities, it's just not feasible for us to kind of do that old fashioned ops handover. But also, DevOps isn't the only approach we're looking at. We're also looking at, for certain applications, site reliability engineering, which is kind of off the Google handbook of how you run cloud-based and hyperscale apps. And there are certain aspects of that are valuable as well. But, this is an evolution, a journey, and actually we've been working towards this for some time. And we started in one part of our network that was kind of new and greenfield. We built this capability, and now we're replicating it into the things that aren't greenfield. But it's pretty tough. It's hard, and for sure there is absolutely a lot of skepticism in some parts. But you just got to look at the big hyperscalers, the big over the top guys. They're making this work, and they're eating our lunch because of it.
Yeah, thanks, Neil. And it's good that you mentioned SRE as an alternative approach. That's something we must come back to at a later point. Pierre, let me ask you the same question. Are enough telcos recognizing the importance of DevOps? Are they viewing this as a way forward, or is there still a degree of skepticism?
Yeah, I think the key point is related to cloud native. In fact, DevOps did not come out of the blue. In fact, DevOps was enabled by the microservice, the cloud native architecture of the application. So today, with a cloud native application, you can do things like canary testing, you can do rolling upgrade, and so on. So this will allow you to run and deploy much frequent changes in your application. And this cannot be done using the traditional method of handing over to operation and so on. It's taking too long. So in fact, it's thanks to the evolution of the application that we can deploy more frequently new version and new services. And this is what and why you need DevOps at the end, and not vice versa.
Thank you, Pierre. And Andriy, let me bring you in this first question as well. Why should telcos embrace DevOps? Is there still skepticism there? I mean, you yourself, you've had a lot of years' experience in the software development market. Must have been a lot of changes.
Yes, and the question for telcos right now, it's not whether or not they should adopt cloud and DevOps. I think the answer to that is yes. The question right now is how to do it the most efficient way. And for those who haven't started yet, the question is, what are they waiting for? There are a few things which are slowing down the adoption. That's a whole separate topic. But right now, I think the issue is that many projects that telcos should be doing, or they're starting now, yes, they accepted the idea in general, but now they lack the expertise and sometimes internal resources to make first steps to start actually moving in that direction.
Okay, thank you everyone for your answers to that first question. And we'll move on and develop this theme. Picking up on what Andriy was saying there, Neil, how does a telco actually create a successful DevOps team? Can you reskill and deploy your existing workforce, or do you need to buy in new talent and expertise? Is there like a mix here? And also, how much internal disruption as well as opportunity is going to be caused by this change?
Yeah, look, a fantastic question. I think, and probably for each organization, the answer is probably slightly different. I think, you probably have to find your own way. At BT, what we decided was we were going to look at, we're going to try and find something greenfield and build it with cloud native and DevOps at the heart of it. And actually, that was our TV platform. We were fortunate enough that we decided we wanted to re-platform that entirely. We created a cloud native microservices based platform, and we built a DevOps organization around it. And well, actually around it is at the heart of it. We brought in some external talent that had done DevOps and built a DevOps approach. We really kind of moved towards that mindset of this can be done. We brought in some of what I like to think of are the gatekeepers, the go-to people in our TV technology team as part of that DevOps team. And once it was up and running, there was things that we learned that we could have done differently, particularly when it comes to dealing with other organizations. We found that they were much more used to the old school operations and co-op method of working, as opposed to a more, well, we're going to push this change now, are you ready for it? So that was a bit of learning. But ultimately we took an area that didn't have high risk, wasn't going to drive chaos in the company, but was important enough that once we'd done it, it would be hard to argue with the success of it. And then we've taken that model and cookie cutted it around some of our other developments. Some of that's gone really well. So we've done it in data and analytics. Some other bits been harder. The move to 5G core, I think was harder because the knowledge and complexity of that platform, whilst bringing in a new set of suppliers and a new technology, whilst you're running a network with 30 million SIMs on it, makes it more difficult. However, what we're seeing now with cloud native is an ability for us to make the operations team's lives much easier, to do adds and changes much quicker, much easier, to migrate from one version of code to another much easier. So, so how do we do it? A combination of actually being committed about one part of our network, delivering that, learning from it, and then figuring out how we then approach that in other parts of the network, and iterating every time, making it slightly better, understanding what's required from a tooling point of view, because the tool chain that you kind of need in this is different to the tool chain that you've typically had. And then ultimately, yes, there are some people you can reskill. I think there's a lot of people you need to bring in new with that kind of coding, scripting, development mentality, that it's hard to train for that. It's a skill that you've either got or you don't. And that was probably one of the hardest parts of this process, not in finding those skills, ensuring that they were there, but also, and this is a challenge that I've kind of set myself over the next few years. How do you really measure the talent that you've got in your own organization, and how ready is it for the next big thing? And I think that's something where lots of industries, including telco, struggle with, and we certainly had a bit of that. So a combination of a bit of everything that you mentioned, really.
Thanks, Neil. Very interesting. Andriy, can I come back to you? From your perspective, how do you see, what's your advice for a telco looking to create and nurture a DevOps team?
So my opinion on this matter comes from 3 separate data points. Number one, we moved our own software, BSS, into the cloud. So we have experience of a product team adopting the DevOps ways. Then we have our internal infrastructure. Quite a lot of it already is in the cloud. So we have an internal IT team, how they switch to this work mode. And finally, we have cloud marketplace of telecom applications. So I had a chance to see a variety of different external teams. And some of those, they were from professional software development companies. Some of them were from hardware manufacturers like Zhylenko phones. They had a team which actually did some cloud development. So I could see what the challenges were there. And it is absolutely true. If you have a skilled resource, if you have somebody who already did it on a senior level, they can do it much faster, and your team will be growing with them also much faster. However, from a practical point of view, these days, there are no special shop where you would go and buy experienced DevOps. This is probably the most highly sought resource on the HR market. And you have to prepare yourself that you will not be able to hire enough skilled and experienced DevOps to satisfy all of your needs. So it's important to treat the resources which you have, an experienced one. They should not be doing work. They should be the ones who are creating the processes and educating your team. And I believe the large chunk of the actual work that will be done, it has to be done by your existing team or people who will come on board, and they will learn and they will adjust. Because this is a new technology, but it is going to be proliferating with every day, and people will learn. So somebody who learned the scripting language already, most of them, they should be able to adopt DevOps with the right guidance and with the ability to experiment safely.
Excellent, thank you. And Pierre, if I could just ask you something that Neil mentioned, and that was there were some areas of telecoms and some areas of the network, such as the 5G core, which are incredibly complex. Does that must put extra pressure on DevOps teams?
Yes, absolutely. Because what was not said by the other speaker is about domain knowledge. You can hire an agile, safe Scrum Master and so on that worked for Google or Amazon and so on. But at the end of the day, you should not forget the domain knowledge, so the telecom knowledge. So in the case of 5G, there is a huge knowledge related to the network technology, to the 3GPP standard, and so on. So what we did in HP, and I think it's working quite well, is we hired externally a few experts in the DevOps, agile, safe methodologies, and an easy role, for example, would be a Scrum Master. A Scrum Master, you don't need to have deep domain knowledge, but it's important to keep on the ground the real people that have the real knowledge of the telecom application of what you are doing, and support them with people that have a successful track of record of building DevOps team or doing agile development and things like that. So this is a mix we do in HP, and I think we are doing quite well here. We're training each other on the domain and on the methodology as well.
Absolutely, yes. Mustn't forget the importance of domain knowledge in our industry. I'd like to move on and look at pipelines and look at how DevOps impacts our production pipelines. And Andriy, I'd like to ask this question to you first. And when we look at processes such as like CI/CD, we know the CI, it's continuous integration. It's quite established. But when you look at the other side of this acronym, the D is a bit more vague, whether it's delivery, deployment, development. It all seems dependent upon the state of the DevOps team and their expertise. So how important is a skilled DevOps team for ensuring a successful cloud native production model?
And you pointed perhaps the root of the issue, because there is no consensus about how and what should be done with the D. And so what I've seen on too many projects, that D, it's assumed some kind of manual work done by these DevOps people. So they would do their magic and the application will appear in the cloud. So a lot of things, the automation, it starts after a button or CLI command has been done. And a lot of knowledge resides in the brains of those people. So right now, there's definitely not enough focus on what happens after the application has been launched in the cloud. Yes, we did the initial configuration, it runs. Okay, how do we do the evolution lifecycle beyond the simple small code updates? How do we make changes in the configuration? How do we ensure the test environment survive? And again, what I've seen on multiple projects, it's one way or another. It's a bit automated way of manual DevOps work. And I don't think this is going to be a viable way going forward, especially because, as I said, the DevOps is very scarce and expensive resource. So I see in the next few years, a lot of more effort should be put into automation of application architecture and making sure that delivery and deployment, it's a well-structured and well-understood process by all participants, not just by DevOps, but also by developers, by product owners, and by everybody involved, and with a clear separation of roles.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. Neil, can I do a follow-up with you on this one? And from your perspective within BT, do you see the life cycle issues and the ongoing work as being an area that requires more attention?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of the aspects of this, that you've got to find what works for your organization. So that the D part of it, in theory, stretches all the way back into the product owner, the marketing teams, the commercial teams of our business to some extent, because they're setting they're setting the demands or the feature functionality, and we're building that into a backlog, and then trying to then map a way of getting there. And then, one of the other big challenges we often see on that side is, what's the architectural guide rails for it? How are we ensuring that what we're building is going to work and fit in with other things that are being built across the company? And that's something that I've yet to really see a good answer to. It's kind of, everyone's got their own bit of chaos until the chaos has to meet somewhere. And then it's like, well, okay, how are we actually going to make this application that we've developed here work with this application that we've developed there? And I think each company, each organization really has to kind of find their own way of managing that against, their own culture, their own kind of empowerment of the teams, so that when those issues come up, that the teams are actually deciding it as opposed to the bosses who really don't know anything about it anyway, frankly. So, these areas are where, in many cases, your whole belief system around this type of operational process is tested. Do you really believe in it? Because if you do, you let the teams self-organize. You let the teams decide the best way of doing that. With the right metrics and the right outputs that they need to adhere to, and obviously delivering the functionality that you want. But you let them get on with it, and I think that's the cultural change that many managers and leaders really find hard to adapt to, because you're there to get roadblocks out of the way, not to actually decide the intricacies and details of how you're trying to develop and build. I think the previous point about ensuring that you've got well-experienced, one or two well-experienced DevOps leads that can build a framework for you, I think is crucially important. And then, then adapt. We talk about the frame, SAFe and other frameworks. They're written almost surgically, clinically clean. It's okay to bend the rules on them every now and again, but for your own organization, but let those doing the work figure out the best way of doing the delivery, the deployment, the updates, because they're closer to the customer, they're closer to the code, they're closer to the impact if it goes wrong.
Great, thank you very much for that, Neil. I'd like to move on and reference a survey that was done earlier this year by HPE and Mavenir. So Pierre, I'm going to come to you for a first response to this one. And this survey was looking at cloud-native 5G core, and it indicated that only 14% of the participating operators actually have a CI/CD pipeline. That was one part of it. But the other part of this survey, one of the results said that, as to the question of who provides this CI/CD pipeline and facility, there's a fairly equal split between systems integrators, vendors, and telcos in-house. The fact that it's coming up like a real equal split between all three different solutions suggests that maybe telcos have collectively, not found a winning, successful formula yet. Pierre, do you think there's still a lot of testing and iteration and work being done on how to achieve this?
Yes, absolutely. And we observe that when we build our 5G core stack, the goal was to be CI/CD ready. And the question was, okay, in which CI/CD toolkit ecosystem will we integrate? At the end of the day, what we decided is to cut the question, and what we do is we ship with our software the CI/CD chain. So the operator may already have an existing CI/CD chain. In this case, we will integrate. But to help the operator is we are shipping the CI/CD as a standard CI/CD toolset with Jenkins and those things. And this is a way to solve the answer. If you don't know, if you have not decided yet on the CI/CD tool environment, well, we can ship it to you and you just use it. And if you are happy, you keep it. And if you want to use something else, we will adapt to something else. So this is the way we solve this issue in HPE with the 5G core stack. We just ship the CI/CD with it.
Great, thank you, Pierre. And Andriy, I'm going to come over to you for some extra comments on this question.
And I think this number, that very low number of telcos actually deploying CI/CD, and those who do it, they're not sure if they do it themselves or with somebody else's help. It reflects the fact, okay, this is a very young technology. This reminds me of the days when I started my programming career, and it was like mid-90s, and back then, every company, every enterprise would hire a developer to write their own accounting system or things like that, especially in Eastern Europe, because the technology was young and people were trying to figure out what to do. And also it seemed to be the technology is so powerful, you can do anything. And yes, you can do almost anything. The question is, how much is it going to cost and how long will it take? And right now, I think the set of tools, but mostly practices about using those tools. I attended a webinar by HashiCorp, and people were asking, how many of you use console? How many of you think we should use console? And most of the people were saying, yes, we've heard about it vaguely, but we're not using it actively right now just because we think it should come some other day. So with CI/CD and with a way to build it efficiently and with less efforts for the actual telco team, I think the tools are not quite there yet, but most importantly, the general expertise is not there. So people there, they're trying to build on their own, or system integrators, they try to build and they're experimenting. And this is where software vendors should look at. And on our side, we have a tool which we developed 12 years ago for automated configuration deployment on all the hardware servers. So right now we are adjusting it and we hope to release it as an open source for ability to manage cloud configuration, cloud deployments. And there should be more tools and more education on the subject so people can pick something and start using it with least amount of efforts and engineering resources required.
Thanks, Andriy. Sometimes it feels like this area is so highly advanced and it's so sophisticated and clear, and at other times it seems that we've got such a long way still to go. I'm going to raise one more issue in this discussion, if I may, and that is, with the rise of DevOps, more responsibility shifting towards developers, and we start to hear this and see this phrase "shift left" appearing, and that gets us to the question of observability, and observability becoming part of the developer's job specifications. I wonder, how can observability help a telco's DevOps team with its infrastructure development and operations? Neil, you've spoken to us several times before about the importance of observability in past TelecomTV summits. What's your views on this?
Yeah, I mean, a really good call. I think, observability lets you know that what you've built or what you're trying to achieve is actually happening. You can see it happening. Actually, in telco, we've been trying to make that sort of work for as long as I've been in telco. We called it OSS and we spent billions on it, and it never quite did what we wanted it to do, sadly. So, by introducing new ways of coding into the applications and the solutions to actually tell us, here's what's happening, and then pulling all that kind of stream data back to what we would in telco call a management console, so that you can actually see whether this application is doing the things it should be doing. Has it got the right number of users on it? Is the speed of the service right? Are all the parameters that say this service is working as well as it should do, are they all in the right position? It's almost like a dashboard for the applications that you run, and then also from that observability, does it help you see other things that perhaps you weren't so clear about, or does it give you insight on something that you didn't realize before? So building these telemetry points, as we call them in BT, are crucially important, because the last thing you want is being told that something isn't working because a customer's phoned you. And our goal is pivoting away from reactive management of services to be much more proactive, and then allowing that observability to use the power of cloud and cloud native. If you know that you've got a problem and you observe that problem, then it can kick off something that fixes it. So, we've got a problem with this. We've observed that we've lost power to a node in Birmingham. We're going to bring up a whole load of backup nodes in Manchester to cope with the extra demand that we're going to see. Without observability, you're kind of missing the point of what cloud really is, frankly, and missing the point of delivering those really true real-time services that more and more use cases on the network, particularly in 5G, calls for.
Great point, Neil. Thank you very much. And we will be doing more around observability later this year on TelecomTV. We have a few things planned. Well, I think that is a really good note to end our discussion on. We must draw it to a close now. We're 30 minutes into the show, so thank you all very much for participating and sharing your views and opinions. Now, if you're watching this on day 2 of our TelecomTV Summit on the Cloud Native Telco, then don't forget, please send us any questions you have and we'll try and answer them in our live after show program later today. And do take part in our online poll. You can find it below this video player next to the Q&A app. All of this year's Summit programs are available to view online here at TelecomTV, and we'll be back later with the after show. Until then, thanks for watching and goodbye.